presentation.
Bien, buenos días. Acompaño en la mesa a Alessandro Persiani y Ramez Saeid, Mohamad, y vamos a entrar en el tema de los cultivos leñosos. Cultivos leñosos que en el Mediterráneo no solo son productores de alimentos, sino productores de paisaje y de mucho más. Estoy pensando en el olivar, sin duda, en las viñas, en los almendros, en muchas cosas. Bueno, vamos a centrarnos en el tema. Primero tomará la palabra Ramez. Él es doctor, diríamos en español, doctor, ingeniero agrónomo, investigador del antiguo Instituto Agronómico Mediterráneo, ahora llamado CIHEAM, de Bari. Es de nacionalidad siria, pero trabaja en Italia desde hace tiempo ya. Especialista precisamente en agricultura ecológica, es asesor técnico y también formador, docente. Si quieres, Ramez.
Good morning, everybody. It's really a pleasure to be here with you, and thank you for the invitation to accept me here to speak, to share knowledge, and also to share the experience, and also to learn from you. I would like to thank particularly also the Ecovalia for this invitation, but I would like also to thank also previous speakers for the nice presentations and also for the, let's say, informative content of their presentations. And I would like to start by, let's say, in conclusion. I will start by conclusion. I would like to give the message that we are here not to promote how that we would like, it's not like we would like to change or to reduce the climate change, but it's a fact that we are obliged to do it. We are forced to do it. And also the organic agriculture is having a very important role to do these efforts. And automatically, when we promote the organic practices, it's automatically we will contribute for reducing the CO2 emissions or to contribute to climate change mitigation. Brief description, and thank you for the chairman for introducing me. I'm specialized, let's say, in organic farming. I did a master in organic farming and also PhD in environmental impacts and agriculture economics. Recently, I'm working in the CIHEAM organization. This organization, probably the majority they don't know, it's intergovernmental organization. We have the main headquarters in Paris. We have 4 institutions covering 13 Mediterranean countries as members. My role now in the organic department as a tutor for the master students, master program, and also as a researcher for the ongoing projects. Just to link our organization for the what we have today, that CIHEAM, they developed a strategy to be applied by 2025. This strategy is constructed by 4 pillars, and to do those pillars, they created 15 priorities. And the most important, let's say for the moment, it's for climate change, mitigation and adaptation solutions. It's not dedicated directly for the organic agriculture, but it's basically in general. And in order to match or to meet this strategy, we rely on our tools that they are cooperations through projects and international and national projects, and also by research and also training. Probably the majority of us, we know the relation between the agriculture and climate change in general. It's a simple equation, but it's very complex in the context of this relation. In the way that agriculture is not the main source, but it's contributing relatively and very considerably also for climate change. And you see from the numbers, it's 10% of greenhouse gas emission in the EU level and 13.5 globally. And from the other side, the climate change is pushing and making a challenge for agriculture, how they can, let's say, adapt again to match or to meet these changes in climate. So in order to push the systems and also to adapt our systems again, to make our systems more resilient and more adapted for climate change, we need to change our practices and to change it, not only to change, but also to do it smartly. So the question is, probably someone asks if the organic farming is contributing for this equation. Yes. It could be a solution for that, but we have to know which, let's say, how we can optimize our practices and optimize our, let's say, management organically or based on agroecology in order to meet this, let's say, challenge. This application, if we apply this concept, let's say, on the woody crops or fruit trees, this is more important, and the impact of climate change is more because of many factors, because we have permanent, let's say, these woody crops, and we cannot change, we cannot respond for the sudden changes, and they have long life, so it's not easy to manage. It's not like vegetable crops that sometimes we can shift or we can change or we can manage. So the important is very high on the woody crops, and specifically when the impact of climate change would affect also the physiology of the trees, and also sometimes for the development stages. In that sense, we have to change later our practices, and sometimes we have to make major interventions for the soil management, and also sometimes, for example, for pruning, we have to change the time of pruning if we will expect that climate change effect will be more and more higher in the future. Now, if we want to make an organic management in a right way, we have a very simple equation that we have to combine between what we have of agricultural practices and also what we have from organic inputs. And here I list some examples, let's say. The list is very long, but I listed here the most important practices. And if you will see during the presentation, I'm focusing too much on soil fertility because actually it's the main important, let's say, part in organic farming. And if your soil is healthy, your system is healthy, and also your plant, and also your health at the end. So the link of, let's say, what I listed here. We have also some list of available, let's say, organic fertilizers. And now the strategy that we have to do and we have to play in organic farming in order to optimize our management is how to combine these practices with the available inputs, with all other knowledge based on our crops, based on other informations. If we apply this, and I forgot to say that this equation is not enough to have it without lubricants. The lubricants for this is to do our practices and to make this combination in a wise way and in an efficient way. Those very fundamental words. So if we apply this equation, let's say, for the woody crops, we see not all these practices that we can use, or we can use anything, but they will be not efficient, let's say, and probably you will using the wrong, let's say, not the wrong, but not the non-appropriate strategy or practice will contribute probably for CO2 emissions probably. So we have to be careful which kind of practices we can use and this combination. Because if we apply also these on vegetable crops, the situation will be different. We can use different tools, or let's say different practices with different inputs. So again, the keywords for having this, let's say, strategy or to have a good organic management must be based on knowledge and also the efficiency of doing our practices. So as probably you know that organic systems, we call it organic system, but we have a wide range of organic systems based on the agricultural practice being applied in those farms. So starting from the conventionalized systems, that it's basically on input substitution, it's certified, but only they substitute the inputs and it's at the end it's organic. And we have gradually going toward using the ecological principles or agroecological systems. So in this wide range, as much as we go for this application, let's say, of agroecological practices, as much as we are automatically reducing or contributing for reducing the CO2 emissions. So we can work mainly on two fundamental issues in order to mitigate the emissions. We can work in parallel, let's say, for optimization our practices from one hand and also optimization of our inputs from the other one. And here I would like just to give, besides to the first slide, optimization our practices, we have to keep in mind many important or fundamental aspects that in organic farming or in agroecology, we are thinking we have to plan, or we are thinking about long-term, long strategies and long programming. Okay. We are using we have to focus on the multifunctionality of practices. So, and also we have to think that we are doing preventive measures rather than curation. And we have to think about also the evaluation of the critical point when we have to intervene and here I cite this picture that is, I took it from my experiments that I do with the students in the first year. It's not by chance, but only to highlight about this point that we can do organic farming sometimes without even, if we do it well, we don't need to have any intervention. This is what you see here. It's not two crops, it's not intercropping. It's basically, the red one is lettuce and the green one, it's weeds. So this combination, and we have got a high yield, let's say for lettuce, without any single intervention for pest control. So this is that we can reach our objectives without having even, sometimes only what we have to calculate or to monitor when exactly we have to intervene. Do we need to intervene actually? And also for optimization of inputs, we have to work on two parallel things for production of these inputs and also application. And here we have to, again, to think that we have to plan our fertilization programs based on the inputs, based on the knowledge that we have, and we have to think about recycling of these inputs, and I focus here on home composting and also for reducing the energy also during the processes of production or application. So here I summarize the effect of some practices, let's say, how we can get the benefits from these, let's say, practices directly or indirectly. And we have multifunctional, let's say, practices that we can get at the same time. They can contribute, let's say, for carbon offsets and also carbon sequestration, and also they could be alternatives also, alternatives for other activities also. We can reduce also the let's say, the effect, or let's say, reduce the impact of other activities. Here, just I wanted to say that the list is very long. Here I cited only the one that is related to soil fertility, and I will explain later why I'm focusing on this issue. And we don't have to ignore the weed management practices. They are really, really fundamental, and they have interactions, let's say, between soil fertility also, and we have not to ignore also the pest control activities. I put here some question marks because here we have still question marks about composting in terms of using, let's say, energy and consuming energy, let's say, in the phase of application, depends on the type of compost. Here, very quickly to highlight the importance of some practices, not just in terms of some numbers that probably we can think about this, the importance of residues incorporation that we have, we can obtain really a high, let's say, quantities of residues that we can use it in different ways. All these pictures from my own pictures, you see that even for vegetable crops, you cannot imagine that we can get from residues, it's up to 2 kilos of residues from one plant of vegetable crops. And this is from legumes. Actually, we can get also from the legumes. This is what I planted personally, that you can reach even up for as source of nutrients. You can reach even up to 150 kilograms of nitrogen. And imagine that you can introduce it as fertilization in the newer fertilization program. So remembering that food trees, they need from 100 to 320 kilograms. So here we need the research to verify these issues by numbers also, and also to promote that although these practices, they consume, let's say, energy, but at the same time we have to think about the long term and what they can benefit our systems for the long term. Here, very quickly, passing to the optimization of our inputs, all you know the difference that we have two categories of fertilizers. I want to focus that on synthetic fertilizers, we cannot do so much for optimization of this because they are chemical processes, and they don't, even for application phase, we cannot do so much in order to optimize, considering that the emissions that coming from those kind of fertilizers, they are very high because 50% of those nitrogen sources, they are emitted. But I want to highlight that organic fertilizers, we can do so much. We can do so much to reduce in the phase of production and also in the phase of application. In the phase of production, we can place so much on the raw materials. We can also introduce new approaches that it's being in use now, that you can add some materials in order to have double function of fertilizers, for example, that you can use it also for disease control or whatever. Now it's being in use also. In the phase of application, we can have of using alternative, let's say, scenarios for our residues. We can have carbon offsets in the phase of production, and also in the application we have also the possibility for carbon sequestration. Here, I compared here the carbon emission between comparing the manure to synthetic fertilizers, the conventional, the soil-based one, and also foliar fertilization, because it's important, because in many farms they are using now so much the foliar fertilization, and it's very efficient in conventional farming. They don't care about the soil, so they care only on the let's say, to solve the problems. That's why you see here that the manure is performing better than the soil-based fertilizers, but it's not the case for foliar fertilizers. And here we have to think that our practices or our fertilization programs, we have to think not only by numbers, but we have to think what the manure can offer to us in the future, let's say in the long term thinking. I just want to mention that here the consideration, I didn't consider any offsets that can be obtained by manure, only to see later the importance of the considering the offsets. Very important also the organic fertilizers production that is so much now in the market, and we don't know any information about those kind of, we don't have even any studies about these products. They are all based on machines and energy, and we don't know how much they can contribute and how we can interfere in order to reduce the impact, let's say, of, or at least to have information about these kind of products. If we see here a little bit of numbers about the coefficients that are being used in literature, about the, some inputs, and we see here that the compost and manure, I put compost in let's say in a range, because it's really, we have wide range of coefficients that being used, and we don't know exactly and sometimes which conditions those composts are produced exactly. We are using, let's say we have a major problem that we are using sometimes affect coefficients for manure, and actually the manure, we don't know which system is responsible for this impact, the system who is producing the manure or the system who is using the manure. So again, the efforts must be so important also to uniform, let's say, the definitions, and also to reduce our assumptions to go more and more for site-specific coefficients. The same, we have to not to ignore also the biopesticides. So here, very quickly, the last two slides. This is what I wanted to say in this, that here, if you see the fertilization activity is the most important contributor for the carbon emission. And here, the case I'm producing the case of comparing between the use of foliar fertilization and organic manure fertilization. If you see here, the organic is having more, even if the system of organic is performing better in all other categories or practices, but in fertilization, they still higher if you consider only the fact of that you are comparing to foliar fertilizers. That's why we have more impact here, but we don't have to stop here. Please, if you see those kind of figures, you have to take the picture as a whole. The picture as a whole, you have to think about the manure, what can do in the future for you, and this is long-term experiment, and then you can see here the numbers that we here for the emissions, and you can see how much we can have carbon sequestration by having this manure. You can see really very clearly the difference. I'm sorry that I was going so fast in sorry, because of the time limitation. And here I cite some very important sources. If you can get the presentation, that's very huge information that you can use either for some reports or papers produced by IFOAM, or also for some projects that you can provide. They provide you by a huge information about the practices in organic farming. They are international projects, and thank you for your kind attention.
the time is over. A continuación os presento a Alessandro Persiani. Él es graduado en Ciencia y Tecnología Agrícolas de la Universidad de la Basilicata y se ha dedicado a la investigación y actualmente trabaja en la Universidad de la Basilicata y es parte de una empresa, de una iniciativa empresarial universitaria llamada CREA SCA, donde se ocupa de la gestión de las pruebas de campo experimentales. Alessandro, cuando...
Thank you so much for the presentation, and thank you to the organizer for this beautiful event here. So, I am Alessandro Persiani, and I am from a universitary spin-off from the Basilicata region. And today I will talk about the environmental sustainability assessment in the orchard systems. Our spin-off is a small group of young researchers from Basilicata region. And the aim of our society is to transfer the scientific knowledge regarding the ecological principles like on-farm composting, the environmental analysis, but also the environmental education, the agroecological service crops, and so on. As you know, and as the farmers know, the frequency and the magnitude of the extreme events, like floods, heavy rains, droughts, and so on, in this last period has increased. Why? That's because of the climate change. No? The climate change is a statistical variations in climate that persists for a decade or longer. As the other speakers said, the agriculture is both influenced by these extremely extreme events, but also can mitigate the events, this impact. More or less, the 20% of the yearly anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions are generated by these compartments. So, the agricultural systems could pollute the environment, but at the same time, the eco-friendly agriculture can mitigate this impact. But how we can choose, how we can say if a system is environmental friendly or not? The first step is to evaluate the agroecosystem sustainability. Generally, the sustainability can be divided into three dimensions, three fundamental dimensions. The social one, the economic dimension, and the environmental dimension. So there are too many methodologies to assess the impact of the agriculture. It depends according to the dimension that we consider, but also the scale, because we can evaluate a cropping system or the whole farm, or maybe a region or a country. And then the methodology can vary according to the indicators that we use. We have some quantitative indicators, so some quantitative methodologies, but also qualitative methodologies or mixed methodologies, some integrated system, like the multi-criterial analysis, for example. Our work is based on quantitative methodologies like the life cycle assessment. This procedure was born in USA in the 70s and was standardized in the 90s by UNEP and CETAC. The life cycle assessment consider one process from the cradle to the grave. So we analyze a process from the extraction of the raw materials to the disposal of the products. And it utilizes a functional unit for which all the data output are relation, input and output are in relation. And it is defining system boundaries. So we define what is considered in this process. So there are four steps to do an energy an LCA. The first one is the goal and scope definition. Then we aim to define our inventory, which is all the data in input that we are considering. There is the impact assessment that we can do by a software. And the final step is the interpretation of the data with a sensitivity analysis. We use the software SEMA Pro, that is maybe the most popular software to do this analysis. And the method that we consider is the CML. This method have 10 categories of impact. And as you can see, the most popular is the global warming potential. That the unit of this category is the kilogram of carbon dioxide equivalent. We're starting to do this analysis from 2008, and we worked in the orchard like table grapes, but also viticultural systems, lemon and orange, stone fruits like apricot and peach, but also kiwi and olive. So the scope of our analysis in this agricultural project is to estimate and compare the impact of orchards managed according to different systems. For example, we compare organic against conventional, and we use as functional unit the kilogram of harvested product, but also the hectare, and we consider the whole cycle of the orchards. That could be, for example, 20 years for an apricot orchards, but 50 years, for example, for orange. In our system boundaries, we consider from the soil preparation and then the transplanting phases to the plants removal. And so we consider all the inputs like fertilizer, chemicals, for example, pesticides, fungicides, herbicides, and so on. And the items, for example, the irrigation water, but also the irrigation system, fuels, machine. So we consider both the direct emissions and the embodied emission. The embodied emission are the impact generated by the production of an inputs. That could be a greenhouse, for example. In this table, I'll show you some results of our analysis. We compare two different management in the apricot orchards. And as you can see, the biodynamics in this case emitted more kilogram of CO2 equivalent because it was performed under greenhouse. So the emission associated to the greenhouse was too much. No? And so this system was at least less environmental friendly than the integrated one. So the fixed structure have more or less the 90% of the impact also in the vineyard, in table grapes. So as you can see, the difference is not so big. In the orange and lemon, as we can see, in this case, we don't have too much fixed structure. So the organic one was more eco-friendly than the conventional. We have to do some consideration. For us, this methodology could be a good stuff and very useful to evaluate the agricultural systems. And we can say that the transition from a kind of system to another one that is considered more eco-friendly is not guarantee of greater sustainability, but we have to analyze case by case. And we think that this analysis have some weak points, some traits, because in the analysis is missing the evaluation of the biodiversity, for example, but also we don't consider the soil quality, the quality of the systems, and the interaction between the different agro-ecosystem components. For resolve these traits, we try to evaluate also the carbon associated to the stocks of carbon in the soil, and also the carbon stock in the fixed structure. And the organic system that had more impact because of the greenhouse, if we consider the whole balance, considering the carbon stocks, become more eco-friendly than the conventional. As you can see, the balance is negative, so was stocked more carbon that the carbon that was emitted. Also, we worked a lot on the on-farm composting. We analyze different systems of composting from different raw materials. And we can say that the on-farm fertilizers are more eco-friendly than conventional fertilizer. But among them, there are differences between the methodology that we use for compost. And for example, the distance from the raw materials to the composting plant and to the farm where this compost is utilized is very important. Like also is important the kind of materials that we use. Because for example, when we use the manure, the efficiency was higher because of the high percentage of dry matter. When we use some other raw materials, for example, vegetables like lettuce, the efficiency was very low because the big amounts of water, more or less the 92% is water, so the efficiency was very low, and so the impact to do the compost was so high. Here show you the bibliography of our works on orchards. So thank you for the attention. That's all.
Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias, molte grazie. Tenemos algunos minutos para preguntas. ¿Hay alguna? Pues si no hay ninguna, levantamos la mesa y damos paso a la siguiente.